Hey, here we are again. I'm Robert Fitton, continuing to rank 140 albums from the year 1991. Thank you so much for joining me on this big, long journey. I definitely appreciate it, especially if you've seen all the videos in the series so much. It ended up being 10 videos, and so and then the unrankable video as well. So thank you so much for that. That's a lot of time dedicated to watching my face and my mouth talk about albums. So I appreciate that a lot. Definitely a lot went into this, a lot of listening. I've been asked in a few comments about exactly how I did this. Did I just rank them all at once? And did I just... No. What I did was, this took about 2 months, and I listened to all 140 albums. Some of them I just listened to once because I knew them so well. I mean, I've heard them over and over again. I didn't really need to do, big, intense listening. I listened to them once. And then I recorded, I would listen to maybe 3 or 4 albums, and then I would record video reviews of those. And then some of them I listened to more than once. The ones I wasn't as familiar with, I would listen to in different settings, listen to them at home, paying full attention, listen to them again in the car or working out or whatever, just to get kind of a refresher there, and then make the video review. And that's why I never say the ranking number in the videos. It just pops up on the screen. That is also why my hair keeps changing, because these video segments were recorded at different times, and then I would, I ranked them all, and boom, here we are. I would rank them as I went, basically. I would say, well, this album's better than this one, but not as good as this one. It goes here. Okay, this album's better than this one, and this one. Okay, it's not as good as this one. It goes here. So I ranked them as I went along, and then put all the videos in order. So that's how I did this. So now you know, back to the ranking, and we are at number 26. All right, let's go way out now and talk about the band Coil and their album Love's Secret Desire. And so this is an album for people on drugs or people who wish they were on drugs. And it's great. They really pull it off in a lot of places on here, especially that very, very first track on here, the Disco Hospital. Man, that is just some cut up like pieces of dialogue slowed down and just random sounds, and just if you put that on, you kind of know what you're in for. And they go, I think, it's far extreme on the very first track, and then they start reining it in. I guess they feel like, okay, if the audience can make it past the first minute and a half of this, then we'll give them the real deal. So Coil is the band, and it is definitely a trip. There's a lot of electronic sounds in here, but it's the kind of electronic sounds that I actually appreciate. I'm not a big fan of drum tracks and beeps and bloops and samples and stuff like that, but when you're going to do it, I appreciate when they're not trying to mimic organic instruments. Like, I don't like drum tracks that try to sound like drums. I like, if you're going to do drum tracks, do them and make sounds that drums can't make. If you're going to try to do, musical sounds, don't try to emulate a piano or a guitar. Make electronic sounds that don't sound like anything else but electronic sounds. And that's what they're doing here. Some of it could actually be used as ambient dance club tracks, like the song The Snow. That would work well in a club where everybody's just like, hey, yeah, man, somebody put something in my drink? Oh, why not? That kind of thing. So, they've got some guests on here. Anti-Anxiety does this whole monologue over this song. She kind of reminds me of the woman in the Brain Ticket Cottonwood Hill album, which I absolutely am fascinated by that album. Play it all the time. And so there's pieces of it that remind me of some, maybe some German progressive rock and some psychedelic rock from the early 70s. It's just, it's like I said, it's quite a trip. It is long. It does tend to wear out its welcome just a little bit in the middle. So there's Mark Almond from Soft Cell making an appearance as well on the Titan Arch song. That one I could kind of take or leave. That's kind of maybe a skippable one upon repeat listens. You're just, yeah, okay. But yeah, there's great moments on here. There's okay moments on here. But that first track, that's the one that's going to either make it or break it. You're going to turn that on and you're going to be like, nope. Or you're going to turn that on, you're going to be like, this is interesting. I wonder what else they're doing. So they let you know right away whether this is an album for you. And I will say, this is definitely not a release that is for everyone. This is not mainstream. This is not middle of the road. This is Coil and Love's Secret Desire. If you think it is something that sounds interesting by my description, check it out. If you're like, yeah, no, it probably will be a no. My ranking of 140 albums from the year 1991 continues with the band Death and their album called Human. And this is some powerhouse stuff of extreme metal. This is, this album is a good starting point. If you're not familiar with more extreme metal and you want to kind of venture into that arena, this would be a good one to get your feet wet in. It's great for this type of music. You've got the lead singer, Chuck Schuldiner. He passed away at a really young age of a brain tumor, but he's on here, and he's got the throaty, this kind of screechy, throaty vocals that are just belted out. But there's some real, seems like just a tinge of real pain in his vocals. It's not just this typical, it's certainly not the guttural ooh stuff that you get with like something like Cannibal Corpse. And the lyrics are about real things. People with, suffering through other people's pain and just all kinds of areas of real life, not the cartoonish gore that you get with some of these bands. So the lyrics are a little cut above the usual, vocals a little cut above the usual, and the music itself is tremendous. It's not easy to play this stuff. These guys are really young as well. I think they're like 20, 21, 22 years old playing this kind of really technical extreme metal stuff. And, a lot of the times the really fast drumming can kind of cover for basically a mid-tempo. You get the, but the beat is still kind of, it's like this mid-tempo thing. Here there is some serious speed, especially the beginning of the second, third track. It's really fast stuff, and the tempo is actually matching it. So that's great to hear. But yeah, it's a cut above, basically. I just wish their name wasn't Death, because that kind of is such a generic word for, just death. I don't know who came up with the name for that band, but they probably would have done better for themselves if they would have had a more imaginative name. But that's what they call themselves. The album is just called Human. I wonder what the song Together as One is about. It's got some interesting lyrics in there, and this pairing of these two people, and everybody else thinks it's obscene and disgusting, and but they're together, and I'm just really curious as to what they're talking about there. But if anybody specifically knows, leave it in the comments. But yeah, Death, Human, a great example of extreme metal done really well. And like I said, a good starting point if you want to try to get into this genre. Up next, it's Prince and the New Power Generation and Diamonds and Pearls. And this is one that I slept on for quite a while. I wasn't literally sleeping on the CD. I mean, I just didn't hear it for a while. I have this relationship with Prince's music where I'm really, really super into it. It's all I listened to right around Purple Rain time, 1999 time, when I first discovered him. Then went to the back catalog. I've talked about all this before in my 2 Prince videos that I did. And then I kind of fell off a little bit after, right around the Love Sexy time and all that. And so when this came out, I was just kind of like, I wasn't big on the songs that I would hear, like the singles, like Diamonds and Pearls and Money Don't Matter Tonight's kind of, Get Off is sort of funky, but it doesn't live up to the real stuff that he was doing earlier that I liked. Cream was okay. That was an all right song, I guess. But I didn't think it was good enough to venture out and buy the whole album. I thought that the tracks would be more of the light stuff like Diamonds and Pearls and whatever. So I never really paid attention. But I found out years later that, the album tracks on here are really where it's at. I really like the Willing and Able song, Willing and I'm Able. Daddy Pop is okay, I guess. The first track, Thunder, is great. Starts off great with that track. So I like a lot of the hidden tracks that didn't get played on the radio or on MTV a lot. But of course didn't discover that until I actually heard the CD. The one that I didn't care for at all. I mean, I don't know why he keeps doing this around this period, but these guest stars where he just has a guest come on and do a whole song. This rap, that Jughead, we don't need that. Nobody asked for that. Or maybe somebody asked for it. Prince asked for it, but I didn't ask for that. And I never was a fan of the just random guests people that would come on and do a whole song on a Prince album. You notice that never happened on like Dirty Mind or Controversy or Purple Rain or Around the World in a Day. or Sign of the Times. You never just had somebody just come on and do a song. But that started happening, and it's like, just don't have the song on there. I don't know why we need Jughead. But anyway, so yeah, it's got its high points, it's got its low points, but the high points are pretty much hidden. And then the song Cream is pretty cool. You know, that's what I can say about Prince and the new power generation. I still always will. My go-to is always Prince and the Revolution. I mean, I'm just one of those people. I mean, I am a Purple Rain guy. Sorry, Prince fans. I know that's not what you're supposed to say, but I am a 1999 Purple Rain, Controversy, Dirty Mind, Sign of the Times guy. Sign of the Times, the album, not the song. Canada delivers with the band The Tea Party. They released their debut in 1991. Love the cover art of this. Love the sound of this. It's basically a demo that I think they tried to put out there, and nobody, no label picked them up at the time. So they just basically released their demo. I think it sounds great. I love the drum sound. It's very raw. It's not a lot of process on there, and that's my favorite kind of drum sound, and it is definitely a part of this album. This is, like I said, a Canadian band from Ontario, only released in Canada. And this CD is not cheap. It's like an $80 CD now. I guess it's pretty rare stuff, but it's I was going to say it's worth it, but I don't know, $80 for a CD. Maybe there's I think there's a reissue you can actually get for cheaper, but yeah, so the Tea Party, they've got kind of like a garage rock sound on some of the songs, kind of a little more of a Zeppelin sound on other songs. So it's right in that kind of mid-60s, late 60s, early 70s kind of thing. It sounds like something that Writing Easy, that label, would put out as like some unheard private press, hard rock band from 1971. That's what the Tea Party sounds like to me, but they are 1991. So they do not sound like the 90s, which, great. Not everything needs to sound like it's right from the time and whatever. You can change it up, and that's exactly what they do. Little bit Zeppelin-esque, especially on the instrumentals, part of like songs like Winter Solstice. That definitely sounds like some Zeppelin with a little bit of bongo action thrown in there. They've got a song called Baby What You Want Me to Do. That sounds like the title of a Led Zeppelin song. That's actually got a piece of Train Kept Rolling right in the middle of it. So yeah, the vocals on this, he sounds kind of throaty. He sounds like he's rocking out. Sometimes the vocals are a little extra, like they're a little much, especially on songs like Sun Going Down. But yeah, kind of raw vocal. The whole thing is really kind of raw. Like I said, they made basically a demo and then released it. And then some of these songs they remade later on albums where they got picked up by a major label. Now, I have not heard those versions because I just discovered this band for this video series. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it, because I wanted to discover great stuff like this that I'd never heard before. So Canada, you've been keeping a secret. And the secret's out. And it's called The Tea Party. The albums just keep getting better and better, don't they? Well, at least that's the hope anyway. As I continue ranking 140 albums from 1991, it is back to England for the Inspiral Carpets and their album called The Beast Inside. These guys from Oldham, England, which I want to say is either really close to Manchester or part of Manchester. They got kind of lumped in with that Manchester sound that was really popular in these days, but they really aren't quite that. They don't have the swirling guitar thing going on. They don't have the same kind of drum beats that a lot of those groups have. They definitely have their own thing going on, and a lot of it involves this Hammond organ that has this sort of 60s garage sound, but they don't sound like a band that's just trying to be like a retro 60s garage thing. Like I said, they have their own thing going on. They're mixing a few different things together here, and for me, it has always really, really worked. Very, very catchy, very immediate. A lot of different kind of songs on here. You have the more danceable kind of pop stuff. You have the slower kind of dreamy, kind of almost dream pop type things on here. You have a 13.5-minute song called Further Away towards the end, where, the closer I get, the further away it is. And they just keep repeating that, and you'll be repeating it too before the song's over. Like I said, over 13.5 minutes long. So it's the kind of thing that like those psychedelic bands used to do on side 2, where, they'd have a song that would either take up half the side or the full side. But since we're in the CD age here, you can pull that off and still have a 10-song CD. So yeah, just great stuff on here. Great lyrics, wonderful dreamy vocals. But it is a little punchier than, it's not dream pop. You know, there are moments on here, especially the final track on here, which is just an instrumental that has the word dream in it. Dreams are all we have. Kind of lets you down, kind of like the plane has landed and you're being released from your journey from the Inspiral carpets here. But this was an album that I got because I liked the cover. And I'd heard of the Inspiral carpets, but I'd never heard anything on this. And it was at that store that I've talked about before on here called Now Hear This, where they had listening stations, which, you know, I'd never seen a store like that before. I'd heard about stores like that, like in the 40s, where, you know, you take the record into a booth and you listen to it before you buy it. But they actually had the CDs. They had one copy of everything, unwrapped, and you just take the CD and put it in the player and, you know, put the headphones on. They had like 10 players lined up against the wall, and I was like, man, not only do I like this album cover and this band's name, but I really like this sound here. So was not exposed to any of this like on MTV or the radio or anything like that. I don't think this was really anything in the U.S., but yeah, blind by almost anyway, just because of the cover and the name Inspiral Carpets. So yeah, I've had this all these years, and it was really great to revisit this. And if you want something that's you know, a little bit lush, but still has a little bit of garage grit to it with that, you know, especially with that Hammond organ, and you know, just really catchy pop stuff along the way. Definitely check out Inspiral Carpets and The Beast Inside. I do not think you will be disappointed in this. So continue the ranking of 140 albums from the year 1991, and I'm probably taking a big chance at putting this one high up here. A lot of people are going to disagree with the ranking of this one, but it is my ranking, and I am putting U2's Achtung Baby in this position because still think this is a great album. I mean, I know a lot of people have a problem with Bono, and a lot of people have a problem with U2 at this point. A lot of it has to do with the Rattle and Hum movie and the way that portrayed them as just being completely pompous. Some of it has to do with that stunt they did with releasing an album on everybody's phones, and they couldn't delete it, and they had to download a special app. Nobody asked. I didn't ask for this. You're using up all. You know, this was back in the days when phones only had a certain limited amount of memory on them, and all of a sudden you've got a full YouTube album you didn't ask for, and half your memory's gone or more. And so I can understand the issues that people have with U2, but as far as 1991 goes, and this particular album, I think it deserves to be here. It's a great album all the way through. Of course, a lot of these songs were all over the radio and all over MTV, and I've had to play a lot of these myself all the time. The big highlight on there, as far as that goes, is the song Mysterious Ways, which I thought was great the first time I heard it. Very catchy and, you know, upbeat, and it makes you move. Put your groove thing on, you know what I mean? But yeah, I've always liked Mysterious Ways, and One is great. Their song One. So now they've gone into that, you know, that category of bands that have a song called One. So they're joining Metallica and Three Dog Night and the Bee Gees and, you know, all those groups that have a song just called One. But yeah, so it has, Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses? This is kind of this soaring, epic sounding song, even though it's shorter. Even Better Than a Real Thing is great. You know, great song to kind of be track 2. I wish it was track 1. I'm not a big fan of the first song, Zoo Station. I think they could have just left that off or moved it later on in the album and just started off with a bang with Even Better Than the Real Thing. But who am I to judge? Ultraviolet, Light My Way is a great kind of softer sound with Bono kind of using his soft romantic voice, seducing you, as it were. He didn't seduce me, though. I think it's a nice song, though. But, yeah, nice CD packaging here, you know, with all the different photos, and, the booklet gives you all the lyrics and all this stuff, and it's just a great CD. I've always liked it, never had a problem with U2, and hearing this again after, I probably haven't heard this since maybe the mid-2000s or something like that, maybe earlier, but hearing it again, this is probably, I would say, my second favorite U2 album after War. I mean, I know that a lot of people drop off after a certain period in the 80s. Usually Joshua Tree is a lot of people's stepping off point, but I've heard those songs Man, those got played a lot. Where the Streets Have No Name and With or Without You, which that's an incredible song. But yeah, I think I actually like this a little more. It's a little more immediate, a little more fun, a little more, you put this on, it's a little more nostalgic. Joshua Tree is a little more serious, a little more, kind of, we're making the big statement. And of course, they go even more fun and more light with pop and things like that. The album's coming up after this, and they kind of lose me a little bit on some of those. But this one is still a standout. Joshua Tree's probably my third favorite, by the way. But yeah, this is a standout. This is Achtung Baby. So a lot of people are going to disagree. That's fine. We all have our opinions, and if we all thought the same thing, what a boring world this would be, as far as music opinions, anyway. So yeah. So as I continue with my little countdown of 140 albums from the year 1991, we go to Reading for the band Chapterhouse and their album called Whirlpool. These guys from Reading, and they only had a couple of albums out. They just did 2 albums, and then they were done. Sort of, they're classified as dream pop. They're a little more, I guess, intense than that. The first song, Breather, definitely. When that hits the, when you turn that on, you realize this is going to be more than just the kind of shoegazy kind of, softer kind of dreamy kind of stuff. This is much more going on than that. It's a great way to start this album. They've got a couple tracks after they got the Pearl song after that, which was, I think, the single that actually got on the radio for like 2 minutes. It wasn't even on the radio long enough to finish the song, basically. And then after that, you have Auto Sleeper, which is just this massive thing that just swirls into this cacophony of sound. So you definitely know you're not the usual kind of dream pop kind of thing. This is an intense dream. This is more like the kind of thing that you just you can drive fast to this, you can crank this up, it just really fills the room. Nice soundscape with a lot of this stuff. The track after that, called Treasure, is more, I think, what people would expect to hear if you're listening to something called dream pop. You're like, okay, well, that's a little more like I was thinking. But yeah, the album is great. I'm not a big, official, gatekeeper on dream pop or shoegaze or whatever, but I do like the band Chapterhouse. I heard of these guys in '91. I heard a couple of the tracks. Like I said, the Pearl one that used to play. But had totally forgotten about these guys. Like I've said this before, there's a great thing about doing this massive list of albums from '91 is all these ones that I had totally forgotten about. I don't know if I would have ever even heard this album again if it wasn't for this video project. So actually, that's one of the reasons I was doing this, and I'm glad to revisit albums like this. Now, the vocalist, even though all of this big kind of music is going on at the time, he does retain this sort of angelic sort of delicacy in his vocals, and they are mixed right into the music, just like you would expect for something like this. They are really down in there. You really have to, if you want to know what he's singing about, you really do kind of have to pay attention. And there is this song on there called Falling Down that's about halfway through that, it comes on with these, the typical 1991 drums and the guitar pattern and all of that, and it sounds a little different than everything else. It sounds like this is what they tried to get on the radio with, and I think this was released as a single but didn't do anything, so it doesn't really match the rest of the album. It kind of throws you off a little bit, but if that's what they were going for, they did not succeed, so they didn't really need to do the Falling Down song. But the final track on here, they lift it up again. The guitars are so heavy on this, it goes from being like a shoegaze type thing, more into just straightforward alternative rock for 1991. And that is the track called Something More. So definitely something you should check out if you're into dreamy stuff that's got a little more going on, a little more, like I said, a little louder, a little more intense than your usual, what's called shoegaze. We used to just call it all dream pop. I didn't hear this term shoegaze until like maybe the last, 10 years or so. So we weren't using, at least the people I was around were not using, I was not reading the term shoegaze in 1991. But yeah, definitely check this out. Chapterhouse and Whirlpool. I've said it before, I will say it again. Apparently in the UK there was a big battle. Are you Team Oasis? Are you Team Blur? And I am definitely on the Blur side of that. And in 1991 they came out with the CD called Leisure, or is it Leisure? Their debut, released on that magical date, the day before my birthday in 1991, September 24th. I'll talk more about why that date is so magical for album releases in this particular year. But yeah, Leisure from Blur, and I think there's a bit of a difference between the UK and the US version, so I'm going by the US version here. That's the one I'm familiar with. I think they switch a couple of songs here. It's fun, it's upbeat, it's rock and roll in some places, it's melancholy in some places, especially the song Birthday. And they have the kind of birthday that you could expect to have when you start to get a little bit older, and it's not so much about getting presents and having birthday parties thrown for you and blowing out candles and whatever. Yeah, Birthday. That's the kind of birthday that it's all about when you get to be this age, and I really appreciate that song. I always liked it, but I definitely appreciate it a lot more these days. But nice guitar work also throughout the entire thing. It's what I always liked about Blur. They've got the great vocals, they got the fun, they got the great guitar, and as far as U.S. hits or whatever, There's No Other Way was the one off here that was kind of on alternative radio. But it was around for a minute or so. But, they didn't really blow up here big until Boys and Girls in the Clubs later on Park Life. And then Song 2 on the self-titled. But this one kind of flew under the radar for these guys. But I picked up on it because I was all about trying to... I would read about these kind of UK bands at the time. And there were a lot of them coming out in 1991. And you'll hear about all of them on this list in some slot or another. Some I've already talked about. But this one I went out and I was like, that's what I'm talking about, and been a fan since like album number 1 with Blur. All right, we're up to one that is kind of a surprise. At least it was surprising to me hearing it again after all of these years. I'd kind of forgotten about this one. Still sounds pretty fresh though, and that is the band Warrior Soul. Yeah, I don't think you saw this one coming. Warrior Soul, God, Drugs, and the New Republic is the album. And this is kind of walking that fine line between like the 80s cock rock and then like the more politically kind of motivated stuff that would come later. This is right there in that fine line. They still have the cockiness with the musical content, but the lyrical content is much more politically driven. You've got subjects in here like food contamination, health insurance, sticking it to the man, a corrupt government, and it just goes on and on and on. So yeah, a lot of stuff like that in here. But again, done with this sort of attitude-driven, just rock and roll. They even yell out, rock and roll, that kind of thing. So these guys were a little bit different for the time. They didn't really last very long, and I honestly had kind of forgotten all about them until I started doing these videos. But used to crank this up back in 91, 92, 93, and glad to get reacquainted with Warrior Soul. First of all, the lead vocalist kind of has a Perry Farrell sound from Jane's Addiction. So, kind of bringing that in there, kind of sound a little more 90s. But again, the guitars, the riffs going on in this, especially in songs like Man Must Live as One. You got the great guitar riffs going on, like even screaming rock and roll and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of a mix. They're kind of right there in that bridge that was going on in 1991. They have a song on here called Hero that's kind of dated. It's thrown back to that kind of big anthem kind of sound. It really sounds kind of out of place on this album. But the real standout here comes more towards the end. The song called The Wasteland. That's a powerhouse track. It just comes blasting out of the speakers, blasting with the lyrical content, blasting everything, pretty much, like I was talking about before. Sticking it to the man, fight the power, and then I'm going to go get laid. I mean, it's like, finally, somebody gets it. They talk about how they're going to leave the U.S. and just go to Mexico where the tequila's cheap and they're just going to bang everything in sight. So it's like, finally somebody just really gets it. You want to stick it to the man. You want to stand up for your rights. You want to talk about corruption, but you also want to have some fun poking in the whiskers. So, they totally nail it on this album. And like I said, really glad to get reacquainted with Warrior Soul. If you're looking for something that's got the rock and roll attitude, but has something actually to say more than, hey, let's party and let's drink and whatever, and let's, rev up the car engine, then definitely check out Warrior Soul. Now, singing about some of the stuff that they were doing, especially in this kind of rock vein, either harkens back to like the 60s or they were really ahead of their time. One of the two here. Like I said, they're talking about food contamination, health insurance, political corruption, evangelicals on TV and all that kind of stuff. The goddamn president can go to hell, is what they say in The Warrior. And also, they bring up a name and call this person a money whore. And at the time in 1991, it seems kind of random to bring this person up, but now it's a very prominent figure who they're calling a money whore. And so, yeah, these guys are right from the future. Definitely remember this one, Teenage Fanclub and Bandwagonesque with that big bright money bag on there. I remember specifically that Rolling Stone magazine kind of dismissed this along with Nirvana Nevermind. They're both on DGC, the label, and Rolling Stone actually didn't even give them individual reviews. Rolling Stone reviewed both of these together and gave them both 2 stars and just dismissed them completely, saying, this one they said that this was, what did they say? Something like it's, man, I used to remember this because it always stuck out of my mind that Rolling Stone gave Nirvana Nevermind 2 stars and didn't even give it its own review, reviewed it with this, and then Spin Magazine, like the same week or the same month or whatever, reviewed Nevermind, gave it its own review, and gave it 5 stars and called it an instant classic. So I used to remember the review for this too, because it really stood out. And it was something like, you know, talking about the bright colors and how these bands that like Nirvana and Teenage Fanclub pretend to be alternative, but it's nothing but mall music and whatever. This is obviously a little more pop-oriented, and it does have kind of poppy hooks. It does have the distorted guitar thing going on. The guitars are not tuned down or anything, so it does sound a little more pop-oriented. But, you know, I wouldn't call it mall music. The concept is great. Goes on for 6.5 minutes. Has a change halfway through. That's the one. I didn't mean to hurt you. Oh no. She's gonna get some records by the status quo. Oh yeah. So they're mentioning records on this. Satan comes on as track 2, and it's just a big mess of noise. What You Do to Me was as one of the big hits, and then Star Sign was the other one. But this is poppier, but okay. That's fine. You don't have to completely destroy it in a review, Rolling Stone, and not even give it the respect of giving it its own review. I liked it. I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. And they came out with another one after this called 13 that I really liked that one as well. Liked a lot of the songs on that. That didn't do as well as this one. I think that's the one with the volleyball and water on it or whatever. But yeah, Teenage Fanclub, Bandwagonesque. Fine, it's poppy, but, you know, it's kind of distorted guitar poppy with the hooks and the melodies. All right, they just keep getting better, don't they, with the 140 albums ranked from the year 1991, and we are up to My Bloody Valentine, and the album is called Loveless. They only had like 2, maybe 3. They had 2 and then 1 much later on. This is the standout, definitely, and I'd read a lot about My Bloody Valentine, but never actually heard them until a few years after. But I'd seen the name My Bloody Valentine and, you know, some of the magazines and whatever, and the college, you know, CMG Journal and all that kind of stuff. And I just assumed they were a heavy metal band at the time. You know, they're named, I'm assuming, after that movie, the slasher movie from 1981, where the people come back from, what is it, the guys come in, the general or whatever, that's going to like the Valentine party or whatever. Anyway, yeah. They're not a heavy metal band. They're more like a dream pop with some noise rock in there. Shoegaze is what the kids would call it now. My Bloody Valentine, yes, starts off with this song called Only Shallow, and right from the get-go, if you don't like that, you are not going to like the whole album. It really sets the tone right there. The track Loomer, we get the drummer decides to take a break, and in the track after that, to Hear Knows When, then the lyricist decides to take off and take a break. So they all get back in fine form with When You Sleep. And we are off and not exactly running. We're off and dreaming with My Bloody Valentine. There are a lot of great melodies in this album. There's a lot of beauty in this album. You just have to kind of swim around to find it. That's the thing. It's not gonna catch you right off bat. You really have to. It's not the thing you just throw on in the corner and you're over here doing the dishes. This is something you really need to do the full experience. It's one of those type of albums. It's not going to be, shouldn't be probably playing at the cookout, you know, or at the picnic, or, you know, at the swimming pool. You know, this is something that really you give it your full attention, and you probably do the headphones thing and all of that, and then you can seek out those, you know, all these different things going on. It's all blanketed under this, just this guitar noise, basically. But if you didn't have that, then you wouldn't have the whole thing. They wouldn't have their signature kind of thing going on there. My Bloody Valentine and Loveless. I think this has gotten a bit of a resurgence. I think it's come back around, and a lot of the younger people are listening to this now. And it went away for a while. You never heard of My Bloody Valentine, and did I just say Valentine? You never heard of My Bloody Valentine in the year like 2002. They went away, and now it's kind of gotten a resurgence with the whole vinyl thing, especially, which leads to the question: if you get this on vinyl, how do you know if it's distorted or not? How do you know if it's good pressing or not if you don't know what it's supposed to sound like? So that's just something to think about. Another thing you can think about is Smashing Pumpkins. And did they get their sound from My Bloody Valentine, like on the earlier stuff? I'm talking about Billy Corgan when he's singing more in the high register, like in the earlier albums, when it's kind of up here and today's the greatest day I've ever known. You know, that kind of thing. It sounds kind of like the vocalist of My Bloody Valentine, but the vocalist in My Bloody Valentine is a little more dreamy, I guess. This is definitely before Billy Corgan starts getting obnoxious later on with, I'm a rat in a cage, and all that stupid, I can't stand that later Smashing Pumpkin stuff. But anyway, yeah, My Bloody Valentine, the song Sometimes, that's got the hooky kind of stuff going on, like I was talking about, those melodies you kind of have to seek out through all of the, it's like walking through a fog, and you can kind of see this over here and this over here. It's the kind of thing that next time I have a fever and I'm in bed or whatever, and I've got sweating and I'm having hallucinations, I'm definitely throwing on Loveless from My Bloody Valentine. And the final song, though, is a little bit different. That's where it takes a little bit of a turn. The song is called Soon, and it's got the drum beats. It's got you know, upbeat. It sounds like it's almost could be like a radio hit or something like that. It's like the kind of thing where I'm thinking a record exec, you know, you got the label guys, they're going, we need a hit single on here. We're going to have to put some. I don't know why they put it at the very end, but anyway, it takes a different turn there in the last song. But yeah, an experience, that is for sure. My Bloody Valentine, a good enough experience to get at least this high on the ranking. So, all right, you know there can't be a ranking of over 100 albums from 1991 without including this one. This is the self-titled album from Metallica. No, this is not AC/DC Back in Black. No, this is not Spinal Tap. This is Metallica with their completely black album cover there, except for the snake there, all coiled up and ready to strike. This is, of course, the album that broke them into the mainstream, blew them up bigger than life. I mean, they started off, you know, they were kind of, you look at the guy at school with the shirt on, you like make the connection, you know, Ride the Lightning or, you know, whatever. And then, you know, Master of Puppets, and of course, Kill 'Em All before that. And then when And Justice for All comes out, of course, MTV picks them up and they start playing that one video over and over again with the movie Johnny's Got His Gun inserted into it. But they still play that again and again. They kind of get, you know, bigger. But this is the one that just threw them into the stratosphere. Enter Sandman, the big song that kicked it all off and kicks off the album. You know, it's like I say, when they put that like disco beat with metal music, everybody loves it. Everybody. I mean, there are people who don't like metal at all, that don't like Metallica at all. They still like that Enter Sandman. And that's that, it's metal music you can dance to. That was the secret. And then later bands like White Zombie and even Prong and bands like that would pick up on that and be like, yeah, metal that you can dance to. That is Enter Sandman, a recipe that completely worked for these guys. And of course, this album also features Sad But True and Wherever I May Roam. That's one of my favorites on here. And Nothing Else Matters. It has that one as well. And then the album tracks like, you know, Through the Never, you know, Holier Than Now. I've said it before when I was on the Springfield Rock Station. I hosted our mandatory Metallica show, 4 Metallica songs in a row every night from all the albums. You know, it wasn't like, well, we can only play the later stuff. We played it all. 4 songs in a row every single night of the week. And then Metallica every 75 minutes, like clockwork. We would play Metallica every 75 minutes. There was not another band like that that had that kind of rotation on our radio station. These guys were absolutely mammoth. They were huge. And Bob Rock coming in to produce and just gave them that sound that was so, like, huge and fresh at the time. That's the thing that a lot of people that weren't around at the time, or maybe the people that were that don't remember, this was exciting and a new sound when it came out. Yeah, it didn't rock. It rocked. Okay, make no mistake. You crank this up, this album rocked. It did not rock the same way that, you know, Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets rocked. It rocked its own way. And thankfully, it did not rock like the later albums. Yikes. But this still rocked. I mean, it was undeniable. And a lot of people, a lot of Metallica fans probably felt a little bit kind of betrayed because, you know, this is our band. What are they doing? Going mainstream. People accuse them of selling out and whatever. Yeah, they were selling out amphitheaters. But, I mean, it's different, but it still rocks to me. And, you know, not every song on here is a triumph, but certainly I didn't get tired of playing the big singles off this on the radio, like I got tired of playing the ones off like fucking Reload and albums like that later on. So it still stands up, is basically what I'm saying. It still stands up. A lot of people are going to disagree. That's fine. This still stands up. Metallica. We are high enough in the ranking and low enough in the numbers where I can talk about Lenny Kravitz and Mama Said, his second album. I was a huge fan of Let Love Rule. I'm like, man, when that came out, there was not a lot of good stuff coming out at that time. What was that, 89? And I was like, man, that is like such a breath of fresh air. I mean, it was right exactly the kind of music I wanted to hear. I was really anticipating this one. I think I like Let Love Rule a little more, but obviously Mama Said, high and good enough to get this high in the ranking. And it's a great album. It's got a lot of the great production I like on it, a lot of the stereo separation. He's still doing a throwback thing in a lot of the songs. In one song, he sounds like that band, the Brooklyn Bridge. In another song, he sounds like he's trying to be Curtis Mayfield. But he is kind of coming into his own. He still puts his own thing on all of this stuff. I'm not a big fan of him, you know, doing the, you know, what, mama? You want what? You want it now? Okay, here we go. And then the horns blast in, or you know, the part where bass, turn it up. Can we turn up the bass a little bit? Let's get a little more attack on that guitar. That just sounds contrived to me. You know, if he was really doing that, giving out instructions for the mixer or whatever, the engineer, then that would be not on the album. So I'm not a big fan of that. But the rest of this a lot of this just smokes. And it's so different. I've said it 100 times in videos, I love albums where there's variety and the songs don't all sound the same. And he does go in different directions. He's got disco going on. He's got the soul stuff going on. He's got pure fire rock and roll rock going on here. He's got Slash playing guitar on the first two tracks, including one of the big singles, Always on the Run, which is just a blast. Love that. He's got the, you know, kind of psychedelic stuff going on with the reprise of the first track. You know, that comes back around. And yeah, this has, you know, Always on the Run was the big hit. And then the disco kind of flavored It Ain't Over Till It's Over. Love that. Just a great album all the way through. I don't know about all the way through. It seems like this is one of those... Back in 1991, I think I said this in an earlier video on this ranking, but this was like, CDs are now the thing. Vinyl's basically on its way out. And so artists are like making longer CDs, but a lot of it is still in that 45-minute range. You know, you get 40 minutes, 42 minutes, 45 minutes, 48 minutes. But some of them are longer, and this is one of the longer ones. I don't remember how long this is. It might be like 55 minutes, something like that, maybe 52. But if you stop this after track 10, this would be a stellar album all the way through. It has like 3 extra songs on it, it seems like, because they do the reprise, and they bring it back to the beginning of the first song on track 10. If they would just stop it after that, stellar album. It starts to kind of peter out a little bit towards the end with, you know, what the ellipsis are we doing or whatever that is, and yeah, the rest of the tracks. Butterfly is a nice way to wrap it up, but yeah, I think it's a little long, basically, is what I'm saying. But Mama Said from Lenny Kravitz, still a stellar release, and I had not heard this in a while, and because Lenny Kravitz kind of fell off for me right around the time like Circus came out, and 5 with that god-awful American Woman remake on there. I was not a fan of that at all. He had a song called Rock and Roll is Dead we used to play on rock radio. We'd get phone calls. What do you mean rock and roll is dead? I'm like, I'm tired of that. And yeah, he kind of fell off for me. But man, those first 3 albums just solid all the way through. And of course, he would follow this up with Are You Gonna Go My Way, which is just, you know, stellar again, especially the title track. But on this album, you know, Fields of Joy, The Reprise is a great kind of like hidden kind of album track on here. And Stop Dragging Around is another one. Just a lot of great music on this album. And that wraps it up. We got one more video left to go. Yeah, thank you so much for watching my ranking of 140 videos. You know, one byproduct of doing all this, I've mentioned a few times, I don't have a lot of vinyl records from 1991 albums. I don't like 90s reissues all that much. I don't get those. They don't do much for me. And the original vinyl I have from 1991 is like 4 or 5 records. So I showed a lot of CDs, and I really doing this, a byproduct of doing this big long thing, is I have kind of gotten reacquainted and fallen back in love with the CD. I might do a whole video on this, but kind of like I did with vinyl records a few years ago when I started getting serious about getting records again. I'd always bought vinyl records, went to you know, the record conventions and whatever. Did that all through the 90s and 2000s and was always in the bargain bins and stuff like that. But I really started getting serious about it about 8 years ago or whatever. And stopped buying CDs altogether and was just exclusively buying records. And coming back to CDs makes it feel like I've kind of gotten reacquainted with an old friend. And the ones from 1991, a lot of them sound great, sound phenomenal. You know, if you've got a good CD player with a good high quality DAC, digital audio converter, and you've got, you know, digital outputs, and you've got a receiver that can handle that, and a CD player that does that, these sound phenomenal. This is before the loudness wars start. This is before the big compression. This is 1991. And a lot of these albums were meant with the CD in mind when they were being produced. And they sound excellent, and I really gotten a appreciation once again for the compact disc. So that was a byproduct of doing this big, long video journey. So once again, thank you for joining me on it. One more video left, and then it's all about getting right to number 1. Number 1 might be your number 1 favorite album of 1991 as well. Hopefully it is. The ones that are at like number 2 and 3, you might be kind of surprised by, but that's how I rank them. So hopefully you'll join me for that. Once again, I'm Robert Fithen. Thank you so much for watching.